Mike Tringe, it is great to have you on the Voice of Influence podcast again.
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you were on the show 5 years ago. Five. Can you believe it's been five?
No, I can't. That you mean like 5 months ago, right?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, we started the show 5 years ago and it's almost to the date. It might even be like the same week that we're publishing this one that we published your other episode. Isn't that
That's
wild?
crazy. That is crazy.
You were like number four.
I remember it was early. I got an email from you, and I just got excited because I thought Andrew's doing a podcast. I just think that was a cool thing that you were doing, and I remember that show being my first interview.
Really?
I think so, like the first
That's
podcast
cool.
interview. Yeah.
Alrighty then. Well, I think that that's fun because obviously we've both grown and changed a lot in the last 5 years. This show has
Mm.
changed. I've changed. I'm sure you've changed. I want to ask you about your company and things, but first, can I just ask, since we're here at this topic, I mean, your company has changed too in the last 5 years. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of CreatorUp and Mike Tringe as its CEO?
Yeah, happy to. Maybe just to start out, I think probably when we were speaking, the majority of our business was focused on training and training the next generation of creatives. And we had done some of that with people who were aspiring filmmakers. We had done some of that with people who were successful or wanting to become successful creators in the social media space. And all of it tied around video and storytelling with video. And I think as we've evolved now, at least on the revenue side, the majority of our business is around making media for companies. Now, the big connection is that we are staffing oftentimes those media projects for companies with the people who we have then trained and certified. So it has come full circle as
Nice.
creating this nice ecosystem. But how that has changed me in my role. Well, at the beginning, I would say I was really the leading the learning division of the company and making sure that we had all of the curriculum and the trainers and the people to get that business model up and going. And then kind of moved into more of a head of production role, who was taking care of making sure all our clients were getting the media that they needed from the projects that we were making for them. And now as CEO, I mean, I've always been the CEO, but I think my current hat, which is soon to evolve as well, would be the head of partnerships, head of sales, right? Making sure that we're on track and growing and partnering with our investors, which is a new recent thing as well. So it's definitely kind of, been a little bit of a merry-go-round, but I like all of those things. And, I'm happy that, we have them at our company. So.
Yeah. Okay, so from training creators to do the videos, to make the
Mhm.
videos, all the little pieces to now production. Do you still do any training?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big part of our business,
Okay.
both on, the onboarding side. When any creative professional starts working with us, they need to onboard. And when I think about training, I think about it a little bit differently than maybe most people do, meaning that, film school has always been a trade school. And you don't learn by sitting in the classroom and taking notes. You learn by getting on a set and doing it. And
Mhm.
so, from my perspective, everybody that works here on any project is always learning something, right? It's just how do you make that a little bit more cohesive and formal of an experience so that it is meaningful, both to you, the learner slash worker, but also to the company and to the companies that you're working for. And so one of the big challenges in the media space is that what are these skills that people have? Writer, editor, director, camera person, like producer. What is a producer, right? Nobody knows what a producer is. And one of the things that I think we help to codify is meaningful recognition of those skills. So, for example,
Hmm.
if you have been able to create media for Google in their social impact space, right, for their Drug Free America campaign,
Which is something you did.
which is something that we did, that would be a meaningful indicator to other nonprofits and social impact organizations that you might be able to work and do that type of content for them, right? And so we really, as an organization, one of the big values that I think we create for the community of creators, but also for our industry, is to create meaningful recognition of the work and the learning that somebody has done, to get them more work. Like, think about how you and I might go about getting a job. You go to LinkedIn, you post your profile and your resume. That doesn't work in the creative industry the same way. It just doesn't. So it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but I hope it helps to contextualize what we're doing.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, if I remember right, part of the reason why you even started CreatorUp had to do with almost democratizing this creation of video. Is that kind of how you would put it,
Yeah,
or?
I think that's fair. Look, I mean, we're not Sony, right? We're not making DSLR cameras. We're not YouTube. We're not making it easy for everyone to distribute their content, right? Those are the technology tectonic shifts that happens on the technology side, right? Because making media is a technological thing to do, right? However, learning how to make that media meaningful, telling a story, for example, and being able to create some mile markers around, okay, this person has done this work, therefore they are qualified to do this work. That is the structure that I think CreatorUp helps to bring to the industry that has not really existed outside of like a IMDb, which, lists the movies that you worked on. But what does that mean to the rest of the world, right?
Hmm. Would you say that you're driven by some of this? I mean, it feels like it's a really important piece of the soul of CreatorUp.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I think I am a believer that the quality of your work, your merit, should be meaningful to the world, to the industry that you work in. And everyone knows, it's no secret, Hollywood has a really checkered past of, you can remember the phrases, Hollywood's so white, me too. There are glass ceilings all over the place, right? With regards to how you grow in the industry that many underserved communities have experienced. Women, LGBTQ, African American, Asian, you name it. It's a known thing. We want to be the anti-Hollywood. We want to be the organization that empowers that generation of creatives who are talented because of their work, who can get work because of their work, not because of the color of their skin, their sexual orientation, their gender, any of those things. And so that is the mission, vision, values of our organization that I think is just so exciting.
So I think every one of us, anybody who is in business, especially as an owner or CEO, there's this huge personal and professional growth learning path. I keep talking to people. I've been asking the other CEOs who I've been talking to lately, and they're all like, "Yeah, I've definitely grown a lot personally." So, over the course of however many years that you've been doing this, what are some of the key things that you've learned as a CEO, but has really been a personal thing too? Not just about
Mm,
leading a company, but personally.
yeah, that's a tough one. It's really hard, isn't it, to really be self-aware of kind of what you didn't know, and um, where you came from and where you are now. But I think communication skills has been something that I always thought that I knew how to do well, but I think what I knew how to do well was to communicate ideas in certain specific ways. I
Okay,
think,
that's interesting.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
you've always been one of the most articulate people in a public space. Like you're really great at writing things, doing a speech.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think maybe that speaks to why I maybe have, I may think of myself as having more natural leadership skills because of those, what you just mentioned. However, when it comes to managing a team, it's a different type of communication skill that's required. And I have found the growth trajectory of my ability to communicate just, you know, I've gotten coaching on this, I've got mentorship on this. It's like you really, as a CEO or a leader, if you're going to manage, you also have to be a masterful communicator. And there are some methodologies for doing that. There are some rules for doing that. But it's not just say what you think, and it's not just tell everybody what to do. It's like, to communicate really effectively, you've really got to learn to listen, right? And not to listen to that one person in that moment, but to listen to the group. And then you need to analyze that information and then determine, well, what decisions are you going to make, and how are you going to communicate that? And it is just so challenging to do as an organization is changing and growing. And I just admire the managers and the leaders that are out there that have been able to grow organizations, because it's magic to me to be able to do it correctly and
Hmm.
well.
Interesting. How would you classify the current stage of business of CreatorUp? Where are you at in the trajectory of your growth?
Yeah, I would say we are in the aggressive growth phase, which is to say, we just received and accepted our A round of funding, which is exciting. But with that comes some exciting goals to reach. And, without getting too much into the numbers, we want to grow, we want to double our growth every year. And that's something that I can only say that we can do because we have done it before. So it doesn't seem totally unrealistic. But when you hear that, and I talk about that with, friends and family, it's like, but how and why? And, it just feels like, but when you pan back and you're solving a big enough problem, then why not be able to double growth, in terms of the market that is available. And really, when you think about what growth means, you're solving more problems for more people. And you're doing so in a way which is like, you believe that you're doing so in a good way and in the best way. So I think about growth as just being able to solve the problem that we came to solve in a faster way. And I see no reason why we wouldn't want to be at that aggressive growth phase. So I just look at it as most things as this challenge, as this exciting opportunity. And I try to speak about it that way with the company as well. Not to think about it as a sword hanging over our head, but if we don't hit a number, that we're all gonna, be on the chopping block, but more to think about, look, we are the right team to be able to accomplish this. Let's do it.
Last couple of years have been crazy. You
Yeah,
guys are now remote. You weren't remote before, right? Or were you somewhat remote? Some people
we
were.
had a
Where
couple
were you at
people
before?
and we had a couple people remote before the pandemic because they were living in another state or because of another reason. But most of us would go into the office most of the time. Um, I remember the day when I was sitting in the conference room and one of our employees knocked on the door of the office and said, really don't feel comfortable coming into the office anymore. I'm going to just work from home. And we both I just looked at my chief operating officer and said, I feel like, that's okay. If somebody feels that way, then we don't want anybody feeling uncomfortable, you know? And so we just I think we're even ahead of the curve with regards to policy in the early days, and just said, we want people to just stay home, because they're going to feel better about that. And then came the existential crisis around, oh my gosh, this is not going away. And the whole remote thing was kind of a side effect. Everyone was just like, we're going to be in business next week. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like, then we'll really be staying home, So I think we were all just kind of in that state of, everybody was in a complete state of confusion and shock. And I don't know if you remember that time, but it was, and continues to be for a lot of people and companies, scary, you know so I think the fact that we've kind of figured out how to be remote and still know who each other is at the company, is a good thing. But we've now put so many different things in place that make it work for us. But in the early days, it was really a struggle, really a
Mhm.
struggle.
Well, what are some of those things that have made it work for you? I mean, maybe there's some technical things, but then also and tactical things, but then also just how do you even maintain relationships and onboard
Yeah,
new
no,
people, that sort of
it's
thing?
great. It's a great question, and one that I obviously think about and have thought about a lot. So one of my relatives, who is a Swedish entrepreneur, I had the opportunity to visit over the last few years. And I remember in visiting him, he told me a story about how, they will religiously have coffee at 8:15 in the morning or 9:30 in the morning or whatever time it is. And it's just informal time. But you have to go.
Oh, okay. This
And
is at their
this is in their
location.
lab. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. In their lab. And he just said to me, he said, most of our good ideas and like good conversations happen during coffee. You know? He said, like, that's where a lot of the stuff happens.
Hmm.
And it brought to mind, like, a lot of people do think about that informal time as throwaway time, wasted time, inefficient time, right? And I just thought, that concept of coffee, of gathering, of community, of fika, which is the word for that moment in Sweden, where you just take that coffee break, is so critical to human health and mental health and just social community. And it just very much fell in line with our values. And we had a point in time where we did do team meetings once a month, and then we just kind of stopped doing them for whatever reason. I just don't know why. I think things got busy and people were traveling. And I had an employee come up to me and say, "Whatever happened to our team meeting?" And that was years ago. So I put two and two together and thought, you know what, we should be doing this weekly, and especially as we were remote. So we now, every Thursday morning at 9, have a team coffee. And that is our time to, wherever we are, have conversation. We give shout outs, we recognize and welcome, we do breakouts and do activities with get to know yous, and all sorts of things, um, which include show and tell, right? What are you working on? What would you like to share? Etc. So I just would say that to me, one of the best things that we've done has been to just have this time as time that we give to each other. And of course, there are quite a lot of other things as well. I don't think everything can be done fully remote, and I can get into that later. But I think in a remote environment, giving people that opportunity to interact informally is just a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I've heard a lot is people are saying that they're going from one meeting to the next without any margin for that, walking down the hall kind of conversation, water cooler
Yeah,
conversation, and that things tend to be more transactional in these meetings because we have a point to this conversation because we're
yeah.
actually calling each other or actually on a Zoom or whatever. So it is, I think that building that in makes a lot of sense. How many people are actually on those calls? I know you have a network that's larger, but how many people do you end up having on those
Yeah, I
coffee
think
times?
it sort of depends on the day. Of most people, if if they're able to attend, but usually it's between now 40 and 50 people, and most of those are full-time in some capacity. Some are employees, most are employees, some may be working as more of a contractor status, but it's a lot, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I feel that doing the breakouts at the midpoint is just really important, because we even came up with, one of the things that we did was to come up with these team ideas. And so if you're on this team, like we have team Eat Up, we have team Charity Up, we have team, what do we have? Team Read Up, right? Which is like a little book club. And those are the teams, but they're also the themes of the little mini communities that don't necessarily have to do with work, but they align with personal interests. So it creates a connection between our workers that they may not have even known that they had. We even have Team Nerd Up for people who love Star Trek and other things. So, and they can just get together and talk about those things and have, rapport and relationship.
Ah, that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. All right. So, have you seen a shift in the requirements of leadership in the past couple of years? What has changed for leaders? What do they
Oh
need
my
to do
gosh.
differently?
Um, wow. I mean, I think this is a tough one, but I think leaders more than ever almost need to have a real knack and understand for conflict resolution,
Interesting. Yeah.
because there is a lot more conflict.
Talk to
And
me about the conflict. What kind of conflict?
well, you name it. People are obviously stressed, right? Super stressed. Personal lives meets professional lives, and um, there's less margin for error, it feels, with regard, because of the last point that we made with regards to the water cooler time. It feels there's less, people are less likely to give each other the benefit of the doubt.
Hmm.
And so to me, it feels like there's less margin for error, for friction, right? And so how do you, and I'm not saying a leader needs to be someone who goes in and solves every single problem, but you do need to understand how to deal with conflict in a way, and especially in a remote way, that is going to be productive. And it's really hard, right? Because when emotions bubble up or things happen, um, the medium is the web, and it's easy to log off. What happens when you log off? Did you just walk away? Did you storm off? Did you will you ever talk to that person again in the same way, right? And everyone's trying their best to do their job, but I mean, it just happens where sometimes people get frustrated or don't get along or disagree, right? And so I think that's been one of the biggest challenges, has been really trying to create that connective tissue that when the conflict does happen, you have something to come back to, right? Which needs to be your values, which needs to be your vision, your mission, all of those things, and to speak to those things. And so what we've worked really hard to do is not to be reactive in the moment, right? To where conflict becomes the issue, because there will be conflict, know it, right? But what we've worked really hard to do has to create a culture of, in a language of, how do we work together and speak to each other in a productive way when there is conflict? What is that language? What is that personal awareness that you have of your colleagues that is specific to them, right? So we did a conscious leadership exercise with one of our investors who led the 15 commitments, and we talked about the 15 commitments, and I think that was just really productive and really useful. So it's kind of a way of thinking about conflict resolution, but doing so in a sort of preventative way, preemptive way.
Hmm. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I think the Harvard Business Review's most recent magazine came was kind of around this topic, but I
Mm,
haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. So the things that they've been talking about have been things more like just mental health and but I think that people are more likely to speak up right now than they have been for a long time, to say what they really think. There's
mhm,
just a um, there's something in the air where they're feeling less pressure to be the perfect employee or the perfect whatever it might be, because there's so much need for employees. There's so
mhm.
much, that the workforce feels somewhat empowered, and people have been talking a lot about politics, and so they feel like can and should speak up. And I think it maybe transfers to other things. I think it just becomes an maybe a little bit gets in the air, maybe.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, it's a different world that we live in right now for everyone. And ultimately, I see the general trend as being a good thing, right? I think that empowerment and transparency, those are all good things. And you can kind of go both ways, right? You can say, oh, well, this digital environment that we're working in is an equalizer and everyone has more space and time. You can also say it's a reducer, actually takes away from our personalization of things. But on the whole, I would say, like, I believe that in a more physical environment, for whatever different reasons, right, that we create powerful relationships in person, right? Because of our body language, because of our rapport, because of the things that we talk about. And so, in a lot of ways, in that physical environment, you've built up this reserve of trust, right? Where it's like, that trust, it's going to take me from here to here. And I'm able to, like, say what I'm thinking and do this and that. And that trust might go down a little bit, but it kind of comes back up. But when you're in that digital environment and you don't have that opportunity to create that trust well, I think it just creates more of almost like a Tinder box
Ah, yeah.
environment, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like any little thing can be a trigger. And
Mm.
so it's my question maybe to you and to the audience and the communities out there of workers will be, how do you build up your well of trust in a digital remote environment to where you don't necessarily feel like you're having to deal with more conflict than you would normally have to do to be productive and to be successful, and so I don't have the answer to those questions other than to say I think media matters, I think stories matter, I think being able to operate in a digital environment is important, because right now this is media, right? We may not think it is because we're having a two-way video chat, but it's media, it's a box, right? and so,
Absolutely.
and so we have to be comfortable in our environment here.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I always kind of go back to this somehow we need to be communicating that we're for each other way more than we're communicating anything else. Like, if I could put percentages to it, which is totally unscientific, it would be like 80%. I'm for you. I am for you. I am for you. In various ways, I'm communicating that I got your back. I'm for you. I believe in you. I believe in you. I think would be another piece of it. But also that I respect you
Hmm.
is also a piece of it. So, but I think that I think because of the nature of collaboration and the need to be able to push back on ideas and um, to come up with the best solutions, there's a lot of, it does seem like there's a lot of what could be perceived as conflict, friction. But the friction isn't necessarily bad. if it gets you somewhere.
Right. I think that's fair. And I think having that perspective on like what conflict really is and what it can be
Yes.
is important. However,
Mm-hmm.
however, I think we can all agree in the last 2 years, we've experienced a little bit more of our dose of
Mm-hmm.
conflict, whether
Sure.
that be at home or wherever,
Yeah.
and that it puts people at just, it makes it easier to go below the line,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. And you're
Which
talking
no
about
one,
conscious leadership.
yeah, which
Yeah.
which means that no one's really being as productive as they could be. So
Right.
I think we're all kind of figuring out the new balancing act. And again, I don't say that I have the answers to any of these things. All I am saying is that I think we're all having to learn completely new ways of working together than we have before. Which, frankly, if I had the control over, if I was the king of the world, I would say, I want us all to go to school to learn this, like how to do this correctly, so that we can all come back and be graduates of like better digital, interactions or whatever those might be.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, I guess there's podcasts, right?
there's always podcasts. Exactly.
um, what let's turn this to CEOs in general. When you're thinking about 2 to 3 things that you think that people, leaders, CEOs need to focus on at this stage of the pandemic, like what are some things that you're focused on that might actually apply to others as well?
Yeah, 100%. So, as a big part of me thinking about what I'm doing next in the stage of the organization, it is very much to create a cultural foundation for our team as we grow. And so, maybe all the things that we've talked about up until this point lead to this topic, but I think that having a strong cultural foundation of your values and to know how to operate according to those values is absolutely critical to growth, to management, to sustainability, and to happiness, right? And so, one of our key KPIs at the organization is just, are people happy, right? We talk about that a lot. And what does that mean? Of course, people want to feel taken care of, compensation, all of those things, but are they happy at work? Are they happy in their role? Are they happy with how things are going? And so, you can set as much as you want up in terms of um, tools and technologies and workflows, right? And also give people really clear guidance on what's your job, right? And how can you be successful in your job? Those are all foundations. But cultural foundations, to me, um, it's not something that you can just we did this exercise last week around just stating our values. What are they? Making sure people are aware of them. But then, hopefully people are living according to those values once and you're hiring for those people who have those values. But then I think also you need to create the forum to be able to develop those values more carefully. And that may or may not be your work product, right? So, as I stated earlier, with the coffees or whatever they are, the informal gatherings, I mean, more important than perhaps before, I think, is the responsibility of the company and the CEO to create a place for people to interact more informally, to interact in a friendly way, because we're working together, we're colleagues, and we don't have to be best friends, but we do need to trust each other fundamentally, right? Trust is not something that's just built up based on a database record of what you did at work, right? Of course it is to a certain degree. But if I'm going to trust you, it's because I understand you. I believe you. I believe in you. Right. And I believe you because, we like the same movie, or we both relate about our pets, or, things that we're not just two-dimensional LinkedIn profiles. We're people, right? We're people who
Hmm.
work at companies.
Yeah, human connection, not just a transactional connection. What do you see as your number one challenge then? This might be related to what you just said, but what do you see as your number one challenge as a CEO in 2022?
I think, outside of hitting all of our company goals, which is it's kind of its own challenge, it would be architecting our organization to be able to be successful, or be as successful as possible, right? And I think what that means is, being clear about the strategy on how we're going to do that, um, putting the right people in the right places, and then creating that, you know, culture of how we meet those goals together. Um, if I were to think about this, sometimes sports analogies are overused, but they're overused for a reason, because they work. Um, I would say it's to be the coach that can help take the team to state, to kind of get everybody excited about who's good at what, where, when, and run the plays, you know, and make sure that everyone's also having a good time. It's just so important. I think that last piece kind of goes really overlooked. I want to make sure that this is hard, but that the people at the organization are enjoying themselves in their jobs and in their lives. And that is something that I think historically companies and corporations have not really had to be as responsible for. I think when you think about a job, or think about our parents' jobs, that's where you earn your salaries to take care of your family and live your life that way. But because of the crossover of home and work and all those things, it just feels more difficult to separate. And there should be separation, but you should enjoy work, I think, as much as you enjoy home. That's my
Mm.
belief.
Hmm. What do you see as the greatest opportunity for companies like yours in 2022? Opportunity.
Yeah, I believe that the creative economy is a big opportunity, a big potential chance for us to create value for the world. And I think that so far it's been, um, I don't think it's realized its potential. I don't think that all of the people who need creative services or creative work are getting those creative services or work. And I think that the people who are capable of delivering that are not connected with the people who need it. And so the reason that we started the company was because of this big gap in supply and demand. And I think if we can realize the potential of bringing that creative workforce together to help deliver really exciting stories and products to the world quickly and easily and on demand, that will be very powerful. An example, um, one of our clients contacted me on Sunday night. She was of Ukrainian descent. Her husband was too. They had started a fund to help Ukrainian refugees, and they were doing great work, had helped over 1,000 families so far with the fund, but wanted to help 15 or 20 or even more thousand families. And in order to do that, they needed to tell their story, right? And you need to do that with media so that it's scalable, but didn't necessarily have those resources. And I said, absolutely, we'll help. We'll have this done on Friday, right? And so that's the kind of urgency and speed and power that I think the creative economy can bring to the world to tell those important stories quickly and correctly that need to be told. So to me, when I think about the opportunity, it's not about like hitting numbers and this and that. It's about making sure that those that have something that needs to get made, we make media that matters, can get it made. And the creative people who make it are the right people and the best people to tell that story.
Mm, that is so powerful. Wow, that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that, what you guys create for that.
Yeah, well, me too. I hope it's done on Friday.
Yeah, I'm sure by the time this comes out, it will be. Um, that's I think just the telling the stories, the connecting the people with the resources, with the need, and all those things. Like I can so relate to how important that is, and to I grieve at the waste when it doesn't happen. It's hard to see it not happen, and so to be a part of connecting those people, I'm sure, is a very gratifying thing.
Yeah, and we're living in the world where internet, right? So it
Why
should
not
be
use it for good?
it should
Why
be
not?
possible.
That's right. Okay. So, Mike, share with us two more questions. Share with us first how people can find CreatorUp and who should be looking at potentially utilizing your services, and finding you. Where should they find you?
Yeah, CreatorUp, www.creatorup.com is our website. You can also follow us on social. I'm particularly active on Twitter, but you can connect with me if you're interested directly. Always email me, and I'll put you in touch with the right teams. But I'm happy to share my email too. It's just my first name, Mike at creatorup.com. And then my Twitter handle is Michael Tringe. I went more formal on Twitter. Uh,
Back
so,
when you
but
started a long
back when
time
we
ago,
started,
before you were really
exactly.
thinking about the brand.
There we go. Exactly. But yeah, I mean, we're open source, open door. So if you find us on our website and you click connect with us or contact us, we'll be in touch within 24 hours.
Okay. When you think of a voice of influence, there's somebody who really does develop their voice. They clarify what their mission is. They build into their team. What advice do you have, or do you have for somebody who wants to be a voice of influence?
Yeah, it's maybe more obvious than you might think, which is that I think that the most important and the hardest step is to clarify that with yourself. I think that you may have things that you see in the world that you want to get done or that you want to be like, but I think ultimately you really have to dig deep and understand the why of you. And the why of you is complicated because we are all complicated, right? And it's difficult to define yourself and brand and make a decision and say, I am this, I am that. No, you're not. You're many things, right? We all are. And so my advice would be to make an agreement with yourself, which is to say that I am more than whatever it is that this definition of my public persona or this pathway that I will pursue for a certain time. I am more than that, and understand that you're holistic. But the thing that you want that is special, that you want about you, that you see maybe also kind of missing in the world, that you want to be to the world, and to just make that agreement with yourself and say, I want to pursue this public identity or this public persona that represents these values about myself. In my case, it was, I really believe in the power of making sure that you can tell your story. I just think that's so powerful. And to me, that's what I'm all about. I've seen how being able for me to tell my story as an out proud LGBTQ founder, filmmaker, has been transformative for me. And I think everybody should have that opportunity to tell their story, their message, whatever it is. And that's what I'm all about. Now, I'm much bigger, broader than that. But when I think about what I do as a voice of influence, that is the special thing that I think I can bring to the world.
Hmm. I love it. Can I ask you one more favor? I know that you've listened to the podcast some over the years, this podcast. Do you have any thoughts about why somebody should listen to the Voice of Influence podcast? I don't ask things like this very often, so I'm really stepping out of my comfort zone on this.
No, I love your podcast. Every time I tune in, I know I'm going to get real. And I know I'm going to get real on stuff that's important to me at that moment. And I just find there are very few podcasts that I want to listen to. A lot of podcasts I feel like I should listen to, or it's like something I should know or something I should learn. But I go to listen to Voice of Influence actually because I want to. I want to hear the stories of the people that you're bringing and their experience, because their experience is so, I think it's the stuff that people aren't really talking about. I think it's the hard stuff to talk about. I think it's the complicated stuff that's interpersonal, that deals with the things that we don't like to discuss. And because of that, I seek it out and I enjoy it. I enjoy it on a walk. I enjoy it randomly, and that's how I like Voice of Influence. I feel like I'm meeting my tribe, my people, my group, people who understand me and are authentic. And I just enjoy it.
Hmm. Well, thank you. I appreciate you indulging me.
No, it's all true. I mean it from the heart. I think a lot of podcasts are too polished. I think they're too formal. And I think that, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of this, what we both enjoy are those long form discussions that go deep. Like we both have that in common. We like that. And I think the reason that we like that is because it does build trust. And I think in a digital world, everything is short, right? Everything is easy. Everything's like quick tips, this and that. And it's like, maybe, or maybe not. Maybe we're actually more inclined as humans to try to have these more in-depth, thoughtful discussions and conversations that are a little bit more, you know, um, I don't know, just open and a little bit less canned, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it does feel I really do appreciate that about podcasts that do this as well, because it just feels human. It just, yeah, like I'm connecting with people. I don't feel like I'm just learning something. I feel like I'm connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Thank you. Thank you
Hmm.
so much for being here again, Mike. And yeah, being a repeat guest on the Voice of Influence podcast, even though it was 5 years in the making for that second interview, but I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for being a voice of influence in your company and for the world and here today for our listeners. I appreciate it.
I really enjoy this time. Thank you.